Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this IBP program, which is Internet Broadcasting Project. My name is Mr. Zumani, teaching at Horatuto Secondary School in Botshabelo. Today, our key focus, our content is based on history, and key focus will be on how was independence realized in Africa in the 1960s and the 1980s. That's where we are going to focus right now as we start. And how was independence realized in Africa in the 1960s and 1980s? The key focus here is going to be on two countries, as it will be examined at the end of the year. The two countries that are going to be focused on is Congo and Tanzania. As we are busy going on about this content, the learner must be in a position to compare how did independence was received in the Congo and Tanzania, because your question is going to be based on the comparative study. There is no way that a learner is going to obtain 100% without ensuring that he compares. As in maths, they are saying what you do on the left-hand side, you must also do it on your right-hand side. So, in these comparative studies, your essay in particular must focus on Congo and Tanzania. Your focus must be on Congo and Tanzania. Now, the key issues that we need to focus on, what is very much important. Learners must be in a position to understand independence and colonialism. The African states were colonized by European countries, and African leaders fought for these countries to get independence. That's where we should start. By independence, we mean African countries had to be autonomous. They had to depend on themselves, not on the foreign rulers, as they were colonized by the foreign rulers. The key issue here is what were the successes and challenges faced by independent African states in Africa. Learners, we should take care of that. We must be in a position to understand the successes, challenges faced by African states. Particularly, remember, emphasis is on Tanzania and Congo, where we are going to be examined. And these successes and the challenges that were faced by these independent African states, we must look at economic and political challenges. The two, which is economic and political challenges. That's why our comparison should be made. And what are we supposed to identify there? In identifying that, we should identify the political challenges in Tanzania. How were they different to political challenges in Congo? Key issues, as I've just indicated, emphasis, learners, as you are making a comparison. Your comparison must be on the types of leaders, both Congo and Tanzania. Remember that one. Types of leadership. What type of leadership after independence did Congo had as well as Tanzania? Secondly, we must talk about the types of governance that we had in both countries. Thirdly, we must also concentrate we talked about the types of government. Thirdly, we are talking about political stability and instability. Dear learners, what I want you to take care of, as we are comparing here, we must concentrate on the types of leaders, both countries, types of government, political stability and instability. When this country received independence, Tanzania and Congo, was there political stability? Political stability or instability? What type of a government? And finally also, what is key? It is colonial involvement. The colonial involvement. When these countries received their independence, were their colonial involvement as trying to assist these countries how to govern themselves. So let's focus on the type of leaders. Focusing on types of leaders. When we talk of type of leaders, you look at the leaders in Congo, you look at the leaders in Tanzania. We should say, were these leaders having the moral character, or were these leaders honest with the people they were ruling? That is when we are trying to talk about the types of leaders. I will explain that further. And secondly, we talked about the types of government. In Congo, when Congo get independence, we had a kleptocracy as a type of a government. Tanzania, we've got African socialism. Congo, we are talking about kleptocracy. Tanzania, we talked about African socialism. And if we had to explain what is kleptocracy, it is a type of a government whereby leaders use the state resources for their personal gains. So as you continue to read about Congo, check whether the types of leaders we had in Congo, were they practicing kleptocracy? Were they working for their own personal gains, or were they trying to ensure that they satisfy the people which they were serving? That was kleptocracy in Congo. Tanzania, it was an African socialism, more or less communism in Africa. But this type of communism, it was done in an African way. Hence we talk of African socialism, a system whereby people work together for a common goal. E.g., Tanzania uses what was called ujamaa, meaning familyhood. Tanzania uses what was called ujamaa, which was a Swahili word that means familyhood. It was a system whereby all the members of the village were supposed to work together and make a production for the benefit of the village at large, not for an individual, as it was happening in Congo. Another comparison, it had to be made on political stability or instability. Were there consistency in terms of governance in that particular country? So you look at Congo, you look at Tanzania, as you go through it, you'll find that there were some inconsistencies in politics as well as in economics. Then you'll be addressing the issue of political stability and instability. In Congo, what happened? That independence, how did Congolese get their independence? Was it easy, or was it problematic or troublesome? But that is another fact that we should consider, as how did the two countries obtain their independence. Congo didn't receive their independence freely. There was a lot of instability. You will find that before Congo was given a full independence, the Belgians they put on King Leopold to administrate Congo. These are leaders who led Congo. King Leopold was administrating Congo on behalf of Belgium, meaning that Congo was a Belgian colony. If you remember very well, at the beginning of my lesson, I tried to differentiate to you the word independence and colony. A country that get independence, that means it was colonized. It was not ruled or governed by the people of their own country, but it was ruled by foreign countries. So Congo, that means King Leopold, he was from Belgium. As Belgium was a colony, Congo was a Belgian colony. So they sent King Leopold there to administrate Congo. And the other leaders who was in Congo, it was Patrice Lumumba, as well as Kasavumbu. Remember, Patrice Lumumba was the Prime Minister of Congo, while Kasavumbu became the President of Congo. That means Congo was led by these two people, Kasavumbu. After the Belgians realized that King Leopold was using kleptocracy, he was using kleptocracy, whereby the resources and the minerals of Congo, he was using them for his own personal capacity. As a result, when they gave Congo independence, he was replaced by Patrice Lumumba, who was democratically elected by the Congolese people. As I have said to you, we must try to check, was there political stability or instability in the two countries as they obtained their independence? In Congo, we will say there was no political stability. When Congo get its independence, the Belgians, they were not in a position to give Congo a total rule. They were still having that thing of ensuring that they do benefit from the minerals of Congo. So Patrice Lumumba, he was totally differing with the Belgians. He wants a total rule as the Prime Minister of Congo. But we'll explain that again as we go on. Let's try to find out the situation in Tanzania. How did it get independence? We have realized how did Congo get independence, whereby there was a lot of troubles and instability, whereby Lumumba and Kasavumbu, they were at loggerheads because Kasavumbu was used by the Belgians in ensuring that Patrice Lumumba is removed, because Patrice Lumumba was a leader who was trying to be honest to the Congolese who don't want an interference of the colonizers in their country. Now in Tanzania, independence, we have realized that in Tanzania get their independence more easily than what happened in Congo. They were given their independence in a very peaceful way. So that means there was that consistency in terms of political stability. And Tanzania never had different rulers like it happened in Congo when they obtained their independence. The only person who became the president of Congo was known as Julius Nyerere. That person, he became the only president in Tanzania when it gets independence. As for inconsistency in terms of stability, when it gets its independence, remember we are talking of how the two countries get independence. So there was that inconsistency because particularly in economy, not necessarily in politics. As it happens, there were political instability in Congo because of Kasavumbu, clashes of Kasavumbu and Patrice Lumumba and other leaders. But in this Tanzania, Julius Nyerere became the only president, and although his economic policies did not go well with the Tanzanian people, the Ujamaa system, whereby people were forced to move in the villages to work together there as families. And then it led to the Tanzanian country to be bankrupt, whereby as Ujamaa means familyhood, and that the Tanzanians, they will rely, actually it means self-reliance, indicating that Tanzanian will rely economically and politically solely on Tanzania without interference of any individuals. But that didn't materialize. Hence, I'm saying there was also economic instability and political instability. Because at the end of the day, Julius Nyerere, with his self-reliance policy, he had to go out to IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, as well as the World Bank, to borrow money in trying to develop the economy of Tanzania. And politically, there was that inconsistency which I explained, whereby Julius Nyerere forced people to move to his system of villagization, where they were supposed to go there and work for the common goal of the country. What were the economic challenges that we get in these two countries? Types of the economies. Here, types of the economies. Let's try to go back in Congo. As I have indicated, that there was this political inconsistency in Tanzania. When Tanzania got independence, King Leopold, in fact, King Leopold, who was administrating on behalf of Belgium, he ruled from 1884 up until he was removed. Remember the reason why he was removed? Because the Belgians realized that he was using the resources for his personal capacity. As a result, he was removed and Tanzania get independence. And Tanzania, as I have indicated, it had different leaders, such as after King Leopold, it was Patrice Lumumba, the prime minister. These things of different leaders in Tanzania caused some political tension. And the issue of Cold War was a little bit involved there. Because Patrice Lumumba was seen as somebody who is very much in support of the West. And when we talk of the West, we are referring to those countries who support USA, which was practicing capitalism. And there was also this person who was known as Antonio Gizenga, who was in favor of the Soviet bloc. Soviet, you understand, it practiced communism and capitalism. Those were the two ideologies that were in clash since from the time of the Cold War. Now, here I'm emphasizing the leaders that were in Congo. And there was also this one who was known as Albert Kalonji. And finally, Moise Tshombe, who was in support, who was fully supported by Belgium as well as the West. Remember, the West countries that support USA, which practices capitalism. So there was these differences between Moise Tshombe, who believed in capitalism, Patrice Lumumba, Antonio Zenga, who believed in the Soviet bloc. That was communism. Now, Patrice Lumumba, as I've indicated earlier, that he was democratically elected in June 1960 as the Prime Minister of Congo, the leaders of Congo. And President Kasavumbu was also elected as the president in September. So that means in Congo we had a prime minister and a president. In trying to differentiate how do the two people rule a country, a prime minister, he is the head of government. He's in charge of government, day-to-day running of the government. That was Patrice Lumumba in this regard in Congo. Day-to-day running of government, ensuring that ministers implement what they are supposed, it is expected actually from them. And when we talk of the president, he is the head of the state. That means he is the head of the state. He controls the prime minister. And he has all the powers to remove the prime minister if he feels. He had all the powers. What is key also, it is colonial involvement. Colonial involvement in these two countries that we are comparing. I've indicated at the beginning of the lesson that learners must compare in order to get full marks. You must talk about the situation in Congo and the situation in Tanzania. Now, in Congo there was colonial involvement, whereby when Congo get independence, colonial involvement, when Congo get independence, the Belgians did not want to give them, the Belgians did not want to give them a full control. They still wanted to exercise control over the Congolese with the intention of getting, benefiting from the economy of Congo and developing their own country. That was the colonial involvement of in Congo by the Belgians. But the Belgians themselves, they argued that their involvement in Congo, they were trying to ensure that there was no communism which was spread in that particular country. They wanted to avoid the spread or the growing of communism in Congo. They wanted to avoid the spread of communism in Congo. Hence, it led to a situation there were, so before that, they argued that they wanted to spread communism. Realizing that Patrice Lumumba was not in good terms, he wanted to be free. He wanted to be independent. The Belgians felt that they wanted somebody who can associate with them, as their intention was to benefit from the country. They end up ensuring that President Kasavumbu was announced to be the president of Congo. So it was the prime minister, which was Lumumba, the head of government, and President Kasavumbu as the prime minister. And he was encouraged to remove Lumumba, as he was not cooperative with the Belgians. And when Lumumba was removed, he was replaced by another leader in Congo whom I forgot to mention in somewhere I was indicating the leaders in Congo, which was Joseph Ilio. Kasavumbu, because he was against the involvement of Belgium, he was removed. And the announcement was made by Lumumba to remove Patrice Lumumba. And he was replaced by Joseph Ilio. The removal of Patrice Lumumba as the prime minister led to a serious division in Congo, whereby Congo was divided into 4 groups. These 4 groups are the ones that I talked about them on page 3. On page 3, whereby Patrice Lumumba was leading from the west, Antonio Gezenga, Albert Kalonji, and Moise Tshombe. That was the division of the Congolese. So this is an indication of how serious was political instability inside Congo. There was no stability in politics. What made matters worse, when Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba made a speech about how they obtained their independence. When Patrice Lumumba made a speech, he was so harsh to the colonizers. He was so harsh to the colonizers. And then being so harsh to the colonizers, his main aim, it was to make sure that he attract much attention from the Soviet. He wanted to be supported by the Soviet. He wanted to get more support from the Soviet because he was against the Belgians. Now, in trying to get support from the Soviet Union, his main aim it was to make sure that he removed Belgian influence. He removed Belgian influence in Congo. After independence, 12 weeks after independence, the government of Patrice Lumumba was overthrown by means of coup. What were the reasons for that? One of the reasons was that it is because of his policy in trying to unite the Congolese. Remember, he was totally against with colonial involvement. He was having a strong feeling that they must govern themselves as it was regarded an independent state. So, his policy of uniting the Congolese was the one that led to his overthrow. And the speech also that he made, which was more critical on the Belgians. And this policy created for him more enemies from the side of the Belgians and the United States. Belgium and the United States connive for his assassination. I think you understand why the Belgians want to assassinate Patrice Lumumba. It is because of his policy of uniting the Congolese, mainly whereby he was totally against for the colonial involvement. So USA and Belgium, because they were having economic interest in Belgium, they form a partnership, they connive in trying to make sure that this person, Patrice Lumumba, was assassinated. These were the politics in Congo. The Central Intelligence Agency of USA was tasked, given a job in trying to ensure that Patrice Lumumba is assassinated. But it never completed its job. It didn't complete its job. It didn't manage to complete its job. What an alternative the West did, which is USA and Belgium, in trying to ensure that Patrice Lumumba is removed. They sponsored Lumumba's rivals. And finally, they get rid of Lumumba because Lumumba was imprisoned. He was imprisoned. He was finally imprisoned, Patrice Lumumba. Remember very well, I said to you, when Congo get independence, it had different leaders as compared to Congo, to Tanzania, whereby in Tanzania the leader was Julius Nyerere only. Let's try to focus on the successor of Patrice Lumumba after his imprisonment. This person was Joseph Mobutu Sese Seko. He succeeded Patrice Lumumba from presidency from 1965 up until 1997 as the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he renamed the Democratic Republic of Congo to Zaire. He renamed it to became Zaire. The political situation in Congo Mobutu Sese Seko, he came up with a campaign which was termed a cultural awareness. That was the political situation in Congo under the new leadership of Mobutu Sese Seko as the president. He came up with a campaign of cultural awareness, whereby he made laws, he introduced laws to change the European names to African names. Remember, we are talking about an African country. How did these countries realize their independence? So Congo is a country in Africa, but because there was colonial involvement, it was a colony of Belgium. The colonizers were naming African people with the European names. So Mobutu Sese Seko was trying to conscientize Africans by his campaign to say that we should be aware of ourselves, that we are Africans, and we must make use of our own identity. Hence he introduced laws that change the European names of the Africans to the African names. The second thing that Mobutu Sese Seko did as the president in charge now, for both priests and parents who were baptizing children and give them European names, those people must be imprisoned for a period of 5 years. These were the new laws under the campaign of Mobutu Sese Seko of cultural awareness. One, he made laws to change European names to African names in Congo. Priests and parents who baptized their children and give them European names were imprisoned. And the third one, what he did, he ensures that the Africans identify themselves by clothing. Western clothing had to be changed. When we talk of Western clothing, we regard the suits and ties as Western clothing. So those things had to be banned. They were banned in Congo. They were banned in Congo. That was the political situation in Congo. Suits and ties were banned. So he came up with 3 laws under his campaign of cultural awareness. Change of European name, the issue of baptizing children, where parents were imprisoned if they continue to name them in European names. The third one was the issue of clothing, whereby ties and suits were banned in Congo. He became so clever, Mobutu Sese Seko, in trying to make sure that he protect his country, Congo. The rift or the misunderstanding due to Cold War that existed between Russia and USA or the Soviet Union, he made that rift for his benefit to gain financial aid. by doing what? He accuses Lumumba as pro-communist and to gain US support. In trying to gain US support, he accuses Patrice Lumumba as a pro-communist because he wanted to gain financial aid from the Western countries. We said he used the rift between Russia and USA cleverly, whereby he accuses Lumumba as pro-communist. Now you'll realize, if the West heard that Lumumba is pro-communist, they will quickly or jump to try and assist this guy, Mobutu Sese Seko, financially in ensuring that communism is not spread in Congo. And in strengthening his political power, Mobutu Sese Seko, in strengthening his political power, publicly execute those who were threatening his political power. He publicly executing them. Those who were against his political power. Others were even hanged. The reason for them to be hanged in public, it was to make sure that he discouraged disagreements. Those people who disagree with him should have a fear to publicly disagree with them because they will be hanged. That was the political situation that existed in Congo under the second president, which was Mobutu Sese Seko. And then his rule in Congo and him throughout the world as a chief example of kleptocracy. You'll remember very well at the beginning I explained kleptocracy as well as African socialism. So his rule, the way in which he was doing things, he was governing politically and economically, he earned himself throughout the world a chief example of kleptocracy. Chief example of kleptocracy as well as nepotism. Nepotism simply means, that means this person as the president, he was only ensuring that those who benefit are those ones who only agrees with him, or those who were family members. That was the type of a government we had in Congo. In other words, when we explain the type of government in Congo, you must talk about kleptocracy and show how did Mobutu Sese Seko introduced kleptocracy as well as nepotism in Congo. All these things I explained under Congo. Remember, at my beginning, I used a mathematical language whereby I said, what do you do when you write an essay in this comparative study, whereby we are comparing two countries? I said to you, what you do on your left-hand side, you must also do it on your right-hand side. So that means we talk of Congo, you talk of Tanzania. When you talk about how did they get independence in Congo, who colonized the Congo, who were the leaders in Congo, what type of government in Congo, you must also do it on Tanzania. So in Tanzania, as I've indicated, the president was Julius Nyerere. There was not a lot of political instability according to the leaders, like it happened in Tanzania, where we had Tanzania was even divided into 4. In this regard, President Julius Nyerere, he ruled from 1961 up until he retired. That was in 1985. He ruled Tanzania. We talked of the how did they get independence in Congo? Where were we saying there were a lot of troubles among the Congolese themselves. But in Tanzania, the transition was very much peaceful, slowly as well as gradual. The Congolese, remember we said they were ruled by the Belgians, while Tanzania, it was a British colony. It got its independence from Britain. It obtained its independence from Britain. So they started to be independent in 1961. And Mobutu Sese Seko ruled up, not Mobutu Sese Seko, we are talking about Tanzania, I'm sorry. Julius Nyerere, he governed up until he decided to retire. That was in 1985. And we secondly said that transition was not the same troublesome as it was in Congo. This one, it was peaceful because the British, when they gave the Tanzanian independence, they gave them peacefully. Tanzania became known as the Republic of Tanganyika when it gets its independence. For a period of 4 years, it was known as the Republic of Tanganyika for a period of 4 years. That was 1961 to 1964. In 1964, Tanganyika, it merged with an island next to it, which was known as Zanzibar. And it changed its name from Tanganyika to Zanzibar. And when we look at the name, it changed its name from Tanganyika to United Republic of Tanzania. I think you get me clearly. I'm saying when it got its independence, it was a republic of Tanganyika for a period of 4 years, 1961 to 1964. But in 1964, there was a name change. What led to the name change? It is because there was a nearby island which was called Zanzibar, and they joined it with Tanganyika, and it changed the name Tanganyika to become the United Republic of Tanzania. And if you look at Tanzania, it is a combination of the two names, Tanganyika and Zanzibar. Tanganyika and Zanzibar. It's a combination of those two names. Political situation in Tanzania. Nyerere is the person who fought for independence. He formed a political organization which was called TANU, Tanganyika African National Union, TANU. That was the political situation in Tanzania. What was his aim of forming the TANU? To make sure that independence was achieved. Tanzania get its national sovereignty. That was the reason for Nyerere in trying to ensure that Tanzania get its own independence. Remember when comparing. In Congo independence, there was colonial involvement, whereby the colonizers didn't want to get out of Congo totally, because they were having interest in the economy of Congo and the mineral resources. But here in Tanzania, the British gave Tanzania a total independence, whereby the Tanzanians, under the leadership of Julius Nyerere, they got their own independence. The British were not the same as the Belgians. When Congo get its independence, they never had any intention of manipulating an independent colony, because knowing for the fact that that particular country was now independent, as Congo did. But not as Congo has done. Congo, their involvement in, not Congo, I want to say, what was this country that was? Belgium. The country recognizes Congo. Belgium, their interest was to make use of the mineral resources, although Congo was independent. But the involvement of Belgium in Tanzania, it was to ensure that they assist Tanzania to suppress military rebellions. There should be no military rebellion. There should be peace in that particular country. So you could see that the involvement of Belgium in Congo is totally different from the manner in which British involvement in Tanzania was. Because here Tanzania was just in trying to assist as to suppress uprisings that might come in Congo. There should be political stability. Whereas in Congo, there was that interest in economy. The type of government, we said they practice what was called African socialism. By African socialism, Julius Nyerere was trying to do what? He embraces the political and economic program. It embraces of African socialism. By African socialism, it's more or less communism. But this communism system, it is in an African way. Hence, it is said that it embraces the political and economic programs of African socialism. Simply means that the Africans will be encouraged under African socialism. They will be encouraged to do what? To go in villages, cooperative villages, work together. The production that is made is not only for few individuals, but for all community members. That was an African socialism in Tanzania. The type of government that Tanzania was. 1963, it changed Tanzania. It changed to be a one-party state, not a multi-party democracy. A one-party state. Which means the only party that has a say in that government, it was Tanzania. Not Tanzania, TANU. Tanzania became a one-party state. And I said to you, TANU means Tanganyika African National Union. So as Tanzania became a one-party state, it went on up until 1967 when it adopted an Arusha Declaration, which was mainly going to focus on the economic development of Tanzania. The Arusha Declaration was adopted in Tanzania by Julius Nyerere. What were the aims of the adoption of the Arusha Declaration? To address, to do what? To address economic challenges in Tanzania. To address economic challenges in Tanzania. The principles of the Arusha Declaration were that peasants should just be the workers. The state officials should not do any extra work outside the government. So by doing that, he was trying to make sure that he levels the playing fields. Everybody had to be equal in Tanzania. Those principles were termed as principles of socialism under the economic system that was Ujamaa. Ujamaa, which was concentrating on ensuring that people moved to villages. under Ujamaa, farms should be run on joint enterprise. And this system, this economic system of making sure that people move to villages was never successful. We can talk about political instability again and the economic instability in Tanzania. Because as it was not successful, the reason was that people were forced by Julius Nyerere, as they were not having interest to live where they were staying in industrial areas and go to rural areas and start making a farming. They were not even having enough sophisticated instrument to work on that particular land. So people didn't have the zeal to move to villages, hence it failed. And they were there to work on joint enterprises. So the failure of Ujamaa as an economic system in rural areas led to the collapse of the economy in Tanzania. And therefore, in conclusion, Tanzania was never successful because it emphasizes self-reliance under the Ujamaa policy, whereby they were going to depend on themselves to make sure that economically Tanzania is developing. But why I'm saying it's a failure, they went out to borrow money from International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. That was the comparative study about independent African states, focusing on Tanzania as well as Congo. I thank you very much for being part of this IBP program. Thank you very much.
Good morning, listeners. My name is M.A.C. Petro, and I'm also going to talk about the comparative case study of Tanzania and Congo. And I'll only concentrate on the economic successes and challenges in Congo and Tanzania after independence. Now, in both Congo and Tanzania, after independence, they started to adopt their own economy. Now, let us start with Congo. We look at the successes of Congo, and after that of Tanzania, because you must remember we have to compare the two countries. So Congo, after independence, they adopted what we called capitalist industrialization. The reason being that they were rich in natural resources. And then Mobutu Seko used these rich natural resources to bring much needed economy in Congo. Profit from these copper exports was used to build a 10-year industrialization program across Congo. He also introduced retrocession, where enterprises were returned to their original owners. So that is the part of Congo. And because of this, it means that Congo became one of the prosperous countries in Africa because of this capitalist industrialization that was adopted by Congo. Now we come to Tanzania. Tanzania, the type of economy that was adopted was called African socialism, because Nyerere wanted Tanzania to be self-reliant, and because the economy of Tanzania was dominated by agricultural sector. So those were the reasons why he introduced African socialism. He introduced what was called Ujamaa cooperative villages, and through this type of economy, rural economy was developed, society became stable, and it was also free from economic inequalities. Now, these were the successes that were found in Congo and Tanzania after independence. And then we come to the challenges. Challenges in Congo and Tanzania in economy. Both countries, their economy, we say that it was not stable. Let us look at Congo. In Congo, after Mobutu took over business from foreign owners, there was economic crisis in Congo. We say that businesses went bankrupt and then or were ruined by mismanagement. There was also corruption in Congo, and this corruption devastated infrastructure and economy. So because of this corruption and then mismanagement of funds, ultimately Congo was forced to depend on massive financial aid from foreign countries. With regard to Tanzania, by 1981, it was clear that this Ujamaa villages has failed. And then the reasons were that it was not well managed. It was not well managed. Another reason is that there was not enough money to invest in to keep the villages going. Not enough money. So the policy of reliance, self-reliance, could not stop Tanzania from foreign aid for financing its development. And then Tanzania, lastly, we say that it remained one of the least developed of the developing countries, Africa. So, lastly, listeners, you must, not listeners, but learners, you must remember that in writing this comparative case study, you have to use what we call PEEL method. And by PEEL method, we mean that P stands for point, and then the first E, you explain the point, the second E, you give example, and then the last letter, which is L, means that there must be a link with the question. For example, let us take the economy of Congo. The first P, it means that we have to describe the type of economy adopted in Congo, which is capitalist industrialization. And then the first E, you explain the point, where now you will say that what happened in Congo during this industrialist, capitalist industrialization, which means that it is where now you will talk about Mobutu, what he did. For example, we say that he used the rich resources, natural resources, to bring in much needed economy in Congo. And then the second E, example about the things that he did during his rule in Congo. Example, there is the 10-year industrialization program across Congo that was introduced. And then the last letter, which is L, which we said that you have to link what you said with the question. Congo became one of the most prosperous countries in Africa. Therefore, the economy was a success, because you are talking about the successes. It means that you have to indicate that because I'm talking about the successes, this is what happened. Therefore, the economy was a success. And then after, when you come to the failures or the challenges, after writing everything, giving the point, explaining the point, and then giving example, when you link that to the question, you must indicate that that is why I said that there was a failure or there was a challenge in Congo. So good luck, let's learners, and then thank you very much for this time. Thank you.